So today's video marks phase 2 of the ultimate home theater project that I wanted to kick off. If you're new to the channel, one, thank you for stopping by. If you've watched episode 1, you already know kind of the basic premise of this. If you don't know what I'm going to be doing or you missed the first video, I'll have a link in the description below so you can watch kind of what the general goal was and what this whole build is about, what kind of stuff I'm using. So this video is a little bit different because as much as I wanted to document and cover the entire process, this whole phase 2 took days, and recording all of that, not only is it a lot of time on the recording and editing side, that's a lot of time to expect for you to watch a video like this. And frankly, we just don't have enough time in the day. So I'm going to skip basic parts such as paint. There are great tutorial videos out there on how to paint your room any color, let alone going from white to black. But I am really pleased with the results. So the room was white when I filmed episode 1, and now it's basically black minus some white trim. And I'm really happy with the results, but I do have a funny story you're going to hear later in this video. You're also going to meet my friend Mike, who I've been super close friends with since I was a little kid. So there'll be some funny moments along the way, and he brings his own experience and tips because we've always done install stuff in the past. And there'll be a mix of voiceovers, some skipping through certain parts to kind of speed run and kind of get to the end state of where I was trying to go for different chapters of this video. So with that being said, let's resume on the phase 2 kickoff. All right, so phase 2, the room is dark now. This is the look I was going for, and now it's time to start cutting some holes. So we're gonna put in the ceiling speakers and the in-wall speakers. And I had a couple lessons learned when you do paint. One is put tarps down regardless of how ready you are to start painting. Once the paint enters the room, assume anything is fair play. I learned the hard way because the handle popped off one of the paint buckets, and before I could even put a tarp down, I spilt a whole gallon of paint on the floor, and that was not a great way to start this project. But I learned a second lesson. Buying water-based paint can actually help. So I used a Sherwin-Williams water-based acrylic, and as much as it looked like a complete disaster and the carpet was going to be a total loss, after doing a lot of scraping and soaking it up with water and some towels, I rented a rug doctor down the street, and thank God it came out because I would have had to answer to the wife had that not gone so well. So now the next part of destruction, we're going to cut some holes. And to do that, my buddy Mike flew in from Boston. Mike, come on in and say hello. So Mikey has been behind the scenes on a lot of the CanJam and Axpona stuff I've done in the past. He's always been an audio friend since we were young.
Of course.
Working on cars and messing around with speakers in the house. So you come in with some electrical skills. Why don't you say what you do? Or
yeah, so I've been working for local 103 out of Boston for about 20 years now. I just got the pin about last month. It's really exciting. But right now I currently work as a project manager, and some of my things I do with my friends is modifications like this to a house where I fly out and I try to help them out and spend some time, and we continue bonding and enjoying car audio, home audio, stuff like that. So it's nice.
Yep. Now to celebrate getting that pin, did you have to get a mustache first, or did that come after?
I don't know what's going on with this. It's here. It's here for now.
It's a Mario.
It's Mario.
All right, so we have some tools. Even though we have power tools to cut holes in walls, which who doesn't love using that? We're kind of old school, I think, when it comes to cutting holes in the ceiling, and we like using just a jab saw, right?
Yeah, just basic hand tools. I mean, nothing fancy. I mean, we're just here hanging out and installing and just gonna get through the day and enjoy the project. We're not trying to overdo it with power tools. You might see some tips and tricks. You might see some things you would do or you don't want to do. But this is just how we're choosing to do it with what we have. So
yeah. So if you've done a lot of this yourself and you're watching this because you want to see how folks like us do it, shoot a comment below. Say what you like doing. Maybe other people can learn along the way with us as well, and then we'll try to respond to some of the comments as well. So I think it's time to start getting some sauce.
Yeah, let's get going.
All right.
This is just like kindergarten all over again. I'm drawing a circle now. Okay. There we go. So normally when I'm cutting holes in the ceiling, after I trace out the stencil, I don't leave the stencil in. But because the ceiling is so dark, it's really hard to see the line without putting my head under it, and I definitely don't want white dust in my face. So I'm just going to deal with marring up the cardboard a little bit. It might make the cut a little bit more difficult, but at least I know I'll stay true to the circle that I'm shooting for. Always have a buddy ready to drill you whenever you're ready.
So it's important to have protective eyewear and earwear. So I'm going to use the Azone A-Rise.
so I don't hear anything but the sweet bliss of victory. So because there is like a pre-installed bracket, and when you do a new home construction, they actually make floating plates so you can mount it off the 2x4, but it'll connect to the other side. That way you can center the plastic plate. So when you're cutting holes for in-wall and in-ceiling speakers, you're not right against the 2x4. Unfortunately, my builder didn't do that, so I'm stuck trimming it right up against the 2x4. And that's where this tool is going to come in handy, because I can basically help kind of finish that curve even with that plastic plate there. So I still get the integrity I need to mount the speaker, but I can curve it and give a nice clean install look. All right, so we trimmed up the hole. I'm going to see how well it worked right off the get-go. See if we can get this to have a nice clean install. And how about them apples? It looks great. So we're going to lock this in. All right, so it turns out all I have to do is swing these like ears inward to kind of push the spring tension on the top of the drywall. And then once it's past the vertical point, I push down on it. You can hear that click. And now I'm locked into place and I'm ready to actually install the speaker. I'm going to trim a little bit of the wire. As much as I'd rather go shorter, my friend is more about saving the copper than I am. So I'm going to do a little bit as a fair compromise. I'm going to trim the jacket off. So basically I just want to lightly spin the outer sleeve around this pair of pliers, and then I'll just grab it and pull. And of course, it wasn't as smooth as the last time, but we got that off. Now I'm just going to expose the copper, so I'm ready to go when I bring the speaker up. And I used 14 gauge on the in-ceiling speaker. More than enough for an Atmos speaker, and frankly, most speakers in general. So we're going to twist this off so I don't have any fray wires. Dang, the wires inside this are pretty hardcore. Please make sure that you match polarity. You don't want to have speakers out of phase, even for surround sound. So red to red, black to black in this case. So I'm going to stuff the wire out of the way because even though it's got that big protective backing, I just don't want it touching the baffle whenever the speaker's doing its thing later. So there are a couple arrows here and there are unlock symbols. So I'm just going to assume that if we line up the arrows to the unlock symbol first, dang, that is nice and tight. And then I twist it. It really locks into place. So there we go. So the Focal 1000 series has the ability to adjust the tweeter. And because my listening position is basically this way, I'm just going to angle it slightly towards the listening position so I get it pointed in the direction I want. So it does rotate, and that rotation will expose the angle that you can tilt the tweeter towards. So I'm not going to do it by much, but I'm pretty happy with that. And just in case you are installing this exact set for yourself, the way these dog ears work, some of the other models that I've dealt with, you use a Phillips screw and it basically clamps this plastic dog ear on the back of the drywall. It's super tight that way. Some people have had issues by over torquing, and there's more margin of error, but it does feel very secure. This system is a spring-loaded system, so it's calibrated to have enough spring tension to support the weight of the speaker and still maintain a seal. But if I were to grab this and pull pretty hard, I can pull the whole basket down just a little bit before it starts to have too much tension and it won't come out. So don't feel like you did it wrong. That's by design with the way this mounting mechanism works. The one thing that's nice about it is it's completely toolless, and I don't over torque or have an issue where a dog ear snaps in the wall and I can't ever remove it later.
So the process to install the in-wall speakers is pretty similar to the in-ceiling. You know, we taped up the cardboard template, we used the shop vac to suck up some of the dust, and after that we were able to finally remove a nice big rectangle to fit the new in-wall speakers. It was a little bit different on the install here though, because we had 2x4s running vertically on one side. We had to create a little bit of a notch to support each of the two dog ears on the side of the speaker. So we put a screw in the 2x4, that gave us something to grab that little block that we were cutting out. And then we switched over to the oscillating tool. We cut out the three sides of the block deep enough to penetrate through the first 2x4, and that allowed me to easily remove them. And as you can see, we have a nice cavity for the in-wall speaker. From there, we basically just attach the speaker wire. Everything looks good there, and we swing the speaker into the wall. We want to make sure we have a nice snug fit, and of course in this case it fit really well because we used the template and pretty much followed it to a T. Once the speaker was installed, I used my drill to slowly turn the screws that kind of pulled out the dog ears to clamp the speaker into the wall. I only did it enough to add some security, but I didn't use the drill to torque anything down because you don't get as much feeling in a drill. Using the Allen wrench is pretty straightforward. You torque it down until it has a nice seal, and I only had one corner where it stuck out just a little bit, and that's more because of the drywall not being perfectly flat. Once the speaker is installed, it's time to dust it off, admire our work, and move on to the projector. So in the phase 1 video, I talked about using the Nothing projector screen. This is a long throw 120-inch lenticular ALR screen, has a 0.8 gain. It's a little bit of a darker gray, and honestly, it's stunning once it's set up. I love the way it reflects in the room. It's a little thing like that, but I really think it helps kind of present the whole curb appeal of my home theater system. Now, I wanted to document a lot more of the process of assembly, but I'm really focusing more on the review portion so you can learn about screens in general and not so much the assembly, because that's super specific to which screen you pick, and there are countless screens out there. The general thing is the same. The general process of assembling a fixed frame screen is similar because they use extruded aluminum frames where the rails kind of slide into each other and you secure it with multiple screws. Once you've fully assembled the frame and you carefully place that on top of your rolled out screen material that will come usually in a tube, you place that on, and then the screen material folds over that frame. That screen material is then secured to the frame after being wrapped around using a large quantity of high tension springs. This process is a little bit more time consuming, and you have to be kind of careful because of the tension force involved. You don't want to stretch or mishook the screen, and you also don't want it to slip and shoot out because the springs have a lot of energy when you're pulling them quite tight. The manual basically suggests to pick the middle slot on the extruded aluminum frame, and we did that all the way around. We followed the directions for the sequence of steps, and when we first started mounting it, the screen had more wrinkles into it, and it took a little bit of time to figure out why that happened. And even though you start at that middle point, to fix any kind of wrinkles or imperfections in the screen, we take it back off the wall. Then I go to the tighter setting on certain points to increase the tension on how much I'm pulling the fabric. I wouldn't recommend going straight to the tightest setting right off the bat all the way around. Start with the medium setting first, or like the normal middle setting. Take a look at it before you mount it. Make sure you're happy with the way it looks. And if you have to make adjustments, tilt it back down carefully on that protective mat it comes with, and then you tighten it up more. Once you've confirmed that there are no wrinkles, it's then safe to mount. And the other thing I notice is the bottom of the frame, because it's such a low profile mount on the wall and it uses an aluminum backing, it's a little bit of a sharper edge on the bottom edge of the screen. I kind of learned the hard way that when we're lifting it and then sliding it down, I scraped the wall a little bit on both corners. Even though our hands were there just to get it so close to the wall, it kind of rubbed. So you might want to use some tips like, blue painter's tape, something to protect the wall until you get it on, and then carefully peel it off. I think that'll help minimize the chance of having to repair your wall, or maybe just be more careful now that you know that that's a possibility. So now that the screen was installed, it's time to move on to the projector. And the projector install is important to do after your screen is there, to be honest, because you want to make sure that the distance of the projector off the wall, whether you're considering it off the wall from the front or the back wall, depending on the distance of your room, you want to get the right placement. Valerian has an optical zoom. A lot of good projectors have an optical zoom. And in this case, it starts at 0.9x and goes up to, I think, like 1.4, 1.5. So my goal was to have it as far to the back wall as possible while still being able to utilize the optical zoom. That way I don't trade off any of my picture quality and the projector seems more out of the way. So after getting a rough idea how far off the back wall the projector had to be to get the ideal throw compared to where my screen was mounted, it was then time to trace out and measure where the projector was going to get mounted up on my ceiling. All right, so now we're going to mount the projector, but in order to do that, we have to kind of template out where the studs are and figure out what we're going to anchor it to, because the last thing we want is a heavy projector falling on my family. So You don't have a stud finder. What are you going to be using?
So little tip and trick I've always kept in my toolbox is magnets. I think we all know sometimes screws are very magnetic. They will read through the plastic, through the tape like that. Sometimes just to get a quick ballpark of where you want to be, I use a magnet. What I'll do is I'll just rub it on the ceiling where I think there might be a joist. There's one. There's two. I know this is a joist in the ceiling, and if I do is I just take a metal straight edge, trace it on the ceiling, and you have a straight line on the wood joist. So
see, I'm more old school. I like to use a stud finder because magnets are cool and all for science projects, but at the end of the day, we need to find some studs. So I'm gonna do it.
Don't do it.
I'm gonna do it.
Don't do it. He did it. He did it.
I did decide to go with the Valerian mount because it has a telescoping rod, which gives you a lot of flexibility for how high or how low it hangs off the wall. It's a really clean mount, and it has the ability to hide the wires thanks to the plate that has a little punch out to pull the cables through. However, the power cord that came with the Vision Master Pro 2 honestly isn't that long, and if you're ceiling mounting it, you lose too much of the cord length going through that post to then safely put a plug anywhere. If you have a plug in your ceiling, great, but I wasn't able to hide that properly. So I elected to run an extension cord, or at least a safe high voltage cord, through the wall, along with the fiber optic cable I discussed earlier. That way, if I ever switched out projectors, I can pop it off. So it was cool that the tube is hollow and I can run some small cables, but definitely don't plan on running multiple, especially thick HDMI cables. It's just not going to fit. However, the mounting system is nice because of the telescoping rod, and it has a ball joint at the end, so it makes it really easy to adjust the projector to get that perfect position. Again, you want to do as much as you can through the optical and physical side for projector adjustments, and minimally rely on any digital correction as much as you can. So we used the vacuum to suck up as much dust as we could as he was cutting through the drywall. It's not going to catch everything, but it always helps. So if you're doing this with a buddy, strongly recommend taking advantage of a shop vac so you're not wearing half of your work. Mario's trying to clean out the pipes. You looking for Bowser?
I am. Look for Princess Peach.
If you get electrocuted, I'll catch you. All right, so basically when this house was built, I had a 2-inch conduit that was run from the back wall up and over to the front to help either support a projector or running more wires to the back of the room without seeing it go across. The problem is, as we get closer to the wall, the conduit doesn't take a perfect 90-degree cut straight across the ceiling. It curves up and over some of the rafts up top, or like the wood up top. So we have to pull it down slightly. We're going to splice into the conduit, and that's going to allow us to snake the cable for the HDMI run up and over the wall. So even though the builder ran the conduit up a little bit higher than what I liked, the good news is they ran this pull wire through the conduit to make it easier to get cables front to back. Now, because I'll be pulling cables today, I don't want to lose that opportunity to use a cable again. So we have some pull string from Klein. We got this at Home Depot. We're basically going to pull enough of it so I can pull the line through twice, because the goal is once we get up to that conduit and we break through the tube so we can get access to both sides, we'll have a single line that's intact to go front to back, and I'm going to have a separate line that can take me from that middle point to the front or that middle point back down this wall. So we're going to get 3 pull strings out of it just by doing a single pull with what we already have in the wall. So we literally made it with like 3 inches. So maybe next time we'll be a little bit extra cautious, but we have 2 lines going front to back now. So we're going to cut this and then finally start hacking up that conduit up top. Once we successfully got the pull string through the ceiling on both sides, it was time to finally start installing the finishing plate in the ceiling. We decided to go with a black brush plate for finishing off the hole in the ceiling, just because it gives us a lot of flexibility. And whether we're adding a new fiber optic HDMI cable, changing the power cord, maybe adding Ethernet, all of this allows us to change what we need down the road and not worry about replacing the finishing plate. Then it was time to install the Valerian projector mount to the ceiling, and again with the telescoping rod, we basically had it set to the lowest setting just to minimize keystone. We loosened the ball joint, and then it was time to attach the actual Valerian projector to the base of the mount. It uses a small plate that locks in, so once you click it into place, it basically has a locking button so it doesn't accidentally come out. Thankfully, due to a lot of planning and measuring, when we first turned it on, the picture throw was really close to where we wanted it. We had to adjust the optical zoom, of course, but there was very little adjustment from left to right, and that ball joint of the Valerian mount really made it easy to center the image as best as possible. Okay, so now that the projector's mounted, it's time to bring all the furniture in the room, bring in the big focal speakers, set up the receiver, and start actually messing around with it and dialing everything in. So naturally, there are going to be multiple episodes that are coming in relation to this project. I am going to be reviewing a couple other products in the midst of all this, so be sure to like and subscribe. I'd love to see it some upcoming videos, but I can't wait to show you the next episode, and I hope you enjoyed watching this one as much as I enjoyed making it. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.